Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Andreas and I'm the author of the London Poker Guide. Today we're doing something different here. I'm going to review a few hands that I played at 1-2 live at the Empire Casino in London. And we're going to start with a very interesting and controversial hand. I say controversial because I posted this on Instagram and I asked people what they thought we should do in the spot on the river, and I got like a 50-50 split between bluffing and giving up. So let's see how the hand develops and see if you would have done what I did or not. So we have a loose recreational player who opens to £7. So this player has two raising sizes. He raises all his big pairs to £12 and everything else to £7. So I knew that he most likely didn't have anything amazing here. The small blind calls here, and I have a hand that's pretty good for squeezing, even though at this stack depth, and if you notice, we all three had around £1,000 in our stacks of about 500 big blinds. We shouldn't necessarily 3-bet out of position with offsuit hands, but I think in this case, because the hijack would probably not have a great hand and the small blind would certainly have raised here if he had had a good hand, so I thought it's a perfect spot to re-raise. So I go for 35, both of them call. And then we get this beautiful flop of 9, 10, jack, all diamonds. So it could not be any worse for the 3-better. So normally when you consider continuation betting in a 3-bet pot, you refrain from doing so if the callers have more sets, more 2-pair, and more draws than you. In this case, they have a lot of everything, a lot more than I do, not necessarily with his hand, but with the entire range. So I will basically check my range here almost, and everyone else checks as well. So we go to the turn. Not much improvement for anyone unless someone has pocket fives here, which is certainly possible. I decide to check again. There is no point in trying to bluff at this point, and I highly doubt that I have the best hand as well. And now the hijack bets £40, the small blind folds, and this is actually a close spot here. I wouldn't fault anyone for folding. It might actually be the correct play because we don't beat a lot. We have some outs, but we might be drawing dead at this point. Also, we might improve to a king or an 8, but if it's the king or the 8 of diamonds, that's also not that great. So yeah, maybe I should have folded here, but somehow I didn't think the hijack had a lot here, and I thought, well, maybe if I spike an 8 or a king, I could be good. But in hindsight, I actually think this is probably a fold here. Anyway, I do call, and then we get this interesting river here, 3 of diamonds. Now, because I thought that the hijack didn't have a great hand, and I was just torn apart. Not having a great hand could mean that he had a draw with a diamond here. But I thought there is a good chance that he might not, and maybe he was just scared to bet a set bigger, or he was scared to bet a set on the flop. Like you could have pocket nines, pocket tens, even pocket fives is certainly reasonable. Jack 10 suited, 10-9 suited, ace jack suited, or probably even unsuited in this case. So there are some decent hands that he could have. And I was thinking like I don't beat anything here, so I don't really have showdown value unless he did this with something like ace 8 of clubs or like a complete air ball, which I didn't really expect him to. I just knew that I wouldn't be good here ever. So it's the question, give up or just bet big here? And this is the question that I asked on Instagram. 45% said go big here. 55% said just give up. So I thought, well, I have to try it here. I probably won't get him off a Queen of Diamonds or King of Diamonds. He shouldn't have any lower diamonds really, but I might get him off those. And obviously, if he has the Ace of Diamonds, that's the nuts. So he will, or the effective nuts, because I could still have King, Queen of Diamonds. He would not fold that anyway. So I thought I'll bet fairly big, but not really huge. So I went for 135 into a pot of 185, and my reasoning was if he has even a hand as strong as pocket nines, he might get the pot odds to call here. However, he's not a good hand reader, I assumed, and 135 just looks like a really big bet at 1-2. I know it's only like 2/3 pot here, but it looks really big to your normal 1-2 player, and I thought I could get him off even strong hands like nines or tens or pocket fives. Well, and he tanked for like 2 or 3 minutes. I was surprised that no one actually called the clock on him. He kept complaining why there had to be a fourth diamond on the river. He has a good hand and he doesn't want to fold. In the end, he let it go though. I never found out what he had, but I assume it was probably a set because I think he would probably let go of everything else. But we got lucky here, and yeah, I still think my play on the river was good, but the the turn call is quite debatable. So let me know in the comments what you think that would have been good here, how you would have played this hand. Would be interesting to find out. Off to the next one, we have ace queen again. So this is actually a straddle here. There's no other way of showing it, so it's not a raise, but yeah, we'll just treat it as a straddle. We raise to 15. Everyone folds except for the straddle. He calls, and we get this great flop here, king jack 4 with 2 spades. So we have a monster draw here, nut flush draw, and a gut shot to a straight. He checks, and here I think it's a mandatory c-bet. I also go fairly big, almost 2/3. This is a wet flop. We have the range advantage and the nut advantage, so I go big on this one. He raises me surprisingly, and I say surprisingly because we block a lot of the draws here. So we have the queen and we have 2 spades. So I thought this might be value on his side, but given that he's so short, he only has 110 behind after his raise here, I figured that worst case scenario, I'm a slight underdog here. Definitely worth shoving. He snap called me, and well, he got the king deuce of spades here, so he also has a flush draw and he has top pair. We get there in the end. He got quite unlucky here, but then I looked it up. I had 49% equity on the flop here, so we both did the right thing. I don't think there is a lot to say about this hand, except maybe that his call there and on the straddle with king deuce suited was a tiny bit loose against low jack open, but yes, I mean, if you defend your straddle, you kind of feel compelled to defend it a bit wider, and yeah, but this is a tiny bit too wide in my opinion, especially for a 3x open, but yeah, it's not a terrible play either. Okay, off to the next one. This time we have king queen. We have a limp from the low jack. This is the same player that earlier got bluffed by us on the 4 flush board. I raise it to 10, and the big blind calls and the low jack calls. Flop comes jack 10, 5 rainbow. They both check to me, and I have a good hand to c-bet here. However, the jack and the 10 both hit the calling ranges and limping ranges quite hard. And I knew that the big blind was quite aggressive. At this point, I wasn't entirely sure yet, but I kind of figured he would be. So I just didn't want to get raised here. I thought I would just take my equity and take it from there. On the turn, we get rewarded for our passivity. We get the ace, we have the nuts now, and both players check to us again. We have to start building the pot. So I bet quite big. This is a good card for me and for my range, I mean, also obviously for my hand. And I thought the big blind might notice that and not believe me, and also someone might have an ace or even two pair at this point, and they would call or potentially even raise me. So the big blind calls, the low jack gets out of the way. And now we get to this interesting river that pairs the board. He checks to me again. And now let's just go back to the turn. If he had a good hand like two pair or better, I think this wild and aggressive player would have raised me there. Now, it's not impossible that he had ace 5, but I strongly discount it. And also now with, yes, he could have ace 5 offsuit, which still leaves a few combinations out there, but I thought it was very unlikely. So I thought he's probably capped at some ace there, like ace 9, ace 8, whatever. Maybe slow play jack 10, although as I said, I didn't really think that he would slow play two pairs there. So then I did this here. I went for a big overbet, 125 into 81, so this is more than 1.5x. Thinking that if he has an ace, he will just not fold here. He won't believe me. So I just went for it. And yes, you could argue that you could make it smaller to get called by an ace, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get called for the maximum if he has a good hand here, and it didn't take him long to call. I don't know what he had, but we were good and scooped a fairly nice pot. And now we're moving on to a series of pocket jacks. So in this hand, it's the same player that just called our overbet here, opens under the gun. The same player again, the loose recreational in the hijack, he calls and we have a mandatory squeeze on the button. The small blind accidentally calls £7 here because it didn't see that I re-raised. Then he had the option of either forfeiting his £7 or calling the 30. He decides to call. The big blind calls as well, and the hijack gets out of the way. And here, small blind checks, and our friend under the gun just open shoves 232 here into a pot of 99. Now this is a bit tricky because we have the small blind behind us to act. He might sit on a monster here, but at this point I just didn't care. I had to go for it. Like, I just couldn't see what hand the under the gun player would shove here. Like, what is it? Like, if he has a hand like pocket 10s, pocket 6s, pocket 5s, 5, 6 suited, I just didn't believe he would do that. Yes, a slow played kings, queens, aces might take this line, but even that's unlikely. And if it is, well, then it's okay to get my jacks in against a big hand button on the button here against such a player who is quite wild and loose and gambly. So I just decided to call here. Small blind folds. And yeah, the under the gun player had queen 8 offsuit, like a true gamble here. We held and scooped another nice big pot. Off to the next one, pocket jacks again, and I think I butchered this hand a bit, but yeah, let's see what you think. So I raised to 10. a short stack, only has 30 pounds left. This time he calls to 10, so it's the same player that earlier mistakenly called the 7 pounds and then called the 30 pounds. And now we have this raise in the big blind to 45 from a completely unknown player. He literally just sat down. This was his very first hand. He had played at a different table where he doubled up. He came here, was a young guy, seemed like he could be a competent player, but I had absolutely no idea about him. So I would say 60% competent, 40% someone who is like a typical 1-2 player who would only raise here with really big hands. I just didn't know. Because of that, I decided to just call this. We were fairly deep anyway, so I thought this is fine to just call, and the cutoff now goes all in for his tiny stack, which means that we now have a side pot, and this is quite important because this is, I think, where I made the mistake. The main pot now has 91 pounds in it, and the side pot has only 30 pounds. We have this flop, which is exactly the same as in the hand before when I had jacks, and I'm not making this up. This is indeed 10-6-5 rainbow both times. Now the big blind bets fairly big, bets 80 pounds. So I didn't know, like normally you would think that because the main pot is protected, he shouldn't bluff here just to get the 30 pounds. But on the other hand, some players don't know about this. He might still be just playing around with whatever. I just thought I have to call these 80 pounds, but my plan was that if he ramps up the aggression or keeps the aggression on the turn, I will have to fold here against the unknown player and with a protected main pot. But here I still call, and now we get the ace, which is obviously terrible for my hand, because if he was bluffing with some ace, now he got there, and he checks now. I will say this. Normally, ace king or even ace queen should just barrel here. However, in 1-2 live, often players are scared and they turn into a very defensive mode now because I could have pocket tens or pocket sixes or something like that here. So they might actually check back a really strong hand here. However, I did think that, especially because of the bet on the flop, that he was weighted more towards kings or queens here. Unlikely that he has tens, because I think tens would always bet here. So I just checked behind. There was nothing else for me to do here. Then the river is a 5. Well, I mean, no one should have 5s here. No one should really have a set here either, or a full house in this case. So unless he was slow playing pocket aces, I mean, that is of course an option, but now he checks again to me, so I think now he's weighted a lot towards pocket kings, pocket queens. And now this is where I made the mistake. I thought, like, there is no way I can win this hand, really, or not no way, but like a 5 to 10% chance. So I thought I have to turn my jacks into a bluff if I want to win the hand. However, I miscalculated the main pot and the side pot. I didn't realize that the side pot was actually 190 pounds and the main pot was only 91. So with a bet of like 180 to 200 pounds, I would probably have gotten the big blind off his kings or queens, and then yes, I might lose the side, the main pot to an ace, but my play would only have to work around 50 to 55% of the time for it to be profitable, assuming that the cutoff has an ace. If I beat the cutoff, then the play would only have had to succeed around 45% of the time, and I think it would have done that. Instead, I just thought, well, the main pot might is protected, I might still lose it, and I just checked behind, knowing that I would most likely lose the hand. And yes, this is exactly what happened. Pocket nines, pocket queens, Both hands kind of make sense, although God knows why he called 10 pounds with pocket nines out of a stack of 30 initially. But anyway, then I guess it's fine to call the all-in for him. The queens here makes perfect sense, like how he played the hand. My hand was really unfortunate that I didn't go for the big bet on the river here, because I think I would have won this pot otherwise. But yeah, you learn for the next one then, I guess. But yeah, let me know what you think, if I should have gone for the bet on the river. Then now we have the third hand with pocket jacks. This is actually a fairly boring one, but just because we have jacks again, I just wanted to go through it. So we have raise under the gun from a good short stacker. He specializes in short stacking and he definitely knows what he's doing. In this case, it's fairly easy. The hand plays itself. Obviously, we raise here and he goes all in. Obviously we call. This is not why I put this hand in, but more like what would we call here with here. I think ace king, ace queen, ace jack, probably not so much. I think that would be my first fold here, and then any pocket pair that I decide to raise against a short stacker here I would call. So I would not raise pocket fives or anything like that, so I don't have to call that off. I would probably raise tens plus, maybe nines as well, and I would definitely call with all of that. I call here in this case. He had sevens, he gets there, no harm done here. I'm happy that I got it in good, so that's an easy one. And to finish it off, I have one last hand, which is very interesting. I say very interesting. It's actually a bit boring if you look at it first, but it's an interesting spot nevertheless. So I raise queen 10 offsuit here in the button, quite standard, and the big blind calls. He is a good thinking player, a good tournament reg. He is also good at cash games, very aggressive player, good at hand reading, I think. So this is basically a GTO spot here, except that I made it 5x pre-flop, which is definitely not GTO approved. But apart from that, now this is basically a GTO spot. So we get this flop here, ace king 5 with two hearts. We have the queen of hearts. He checks. So now what would you do here? I'll pause the video and give you a few seconds to think whether you would see bet, and if yes, to what size. So I think a lot of players would see bet here with this gut shot, and the size they would choose would be a quarter, a third pot, or maybe half pot, because there is a flush draw. And this is what I did here. I overbet 1.5x pot. So why did I do this? I did this because we have a massive nut advantage here. We also have a small range advantage, but that's not the issue. The nut advantage is the main thing here. We are the only ones who have pocket aces. We're the only ones who have pocket kings. We're the only ones who have ace king. Both players have pocket fives. Both have ace five. Both have king five suited. But we have a very high density of those big big cards, good hands. We also have a load of nonsense here, but so does the big blind. So this is a great spot to overbet with both big hands and some really good bluffs. I wouldn't do this with 9-8 of spades, but I would do this with some flushes. I would do it maybe with pocket deuces, pocket threes, because imagine, put yourself in the shoes of the big blind. If you have 7-5 of spades here, or if you have pocket sixes, even with a heart here, you are in hell basically, because you know the button might be bluffing here, but do you really want to call 30 here, such an overbet with pocket sixes? And then what do you do on the turn if you face another bet of say 70, 80 pounds there? So it's just really uncomfortable. So unless the big blind has a big draw or a big hand, he would fold. Even like, imagine king 8 of diamonds here. Would you really be comfortable calling maybe 2 barrels, maybe 3 barrels here? So probably not. And by the way, this is the hand that I would consider triple barreling here against a good player. So yeah, I think if you overbet this flop here, this is the best play. And yeah, as I said, if I get called, then if we get a heart, I will bet small. But if we get anything else except a paired board, like a 5, an ace, or a king, I would just go big again. Like maybe not overbet again, but close to pot. And then depending on the river and the run out and everything, I might go for a shove there even. So yeah, this is a great play, I think. And I don't know what the big blind had, because he folded here after he tanked for a while. If he's watching this video, maybe he can leave a comment and enlighten us what he folded there. Maybe he was just Hollywooding and I had the best hand anyway, and I just got him to fold 7-6 of spades or something like that. But that's the other thing. It's actually quite good if you overbet here. You will not usually get raised, because it takes lots of balls of someone to go to 110 or something like that with a flush draw here or something after I make this overbet. So yeah, this is it for today. I hope you liked it. If you did, please leave a like here and also subscribe to this brand new channel. It would help me grow it. I hope you like the format. If you do so, just let me know in the comments, and then I can do a few more of these videos. I will do a few anyway, because I have some 1-3 and 2-5 hands which are very interesting. I have those lined up. Hopefully within the next week I will be able to publish those as well. And yeah, if you have any other comments, let me know, and see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.